Welcome, everybody, to today's Acronis webinar, Cyber Resilience for Healthcare's Remote Workforce Research and Manufacturing. I'm your host, James Slaby, Director of Cyber Protection at Acronis. I'm an old vendor product guy and industry analyst covering cybersecurity, cloud services, and networking. Check out my LinkedIn profile if you want to know more about my background. We're recording today's webinar, and we will email you a link to the recording shortly after the event, so you can share it with colleagues or review sections that I kind of ripped through because I am going to go fast today. We do have a live Q&A session later in the event, so please submit your questions via the Zoom Q&A at any time. Don't use the chat for that, please. All right. So wanted to get started. If you could start that poll, please. But I wanted to get the audience sense of their direct experience of ransomware attacks. Do you have, just choose one answer there. We have no evidence of an attempted attack, lucky for you. We have evidence of an attempted attack with the phishing emails that didn't get opened. You suffered an attack, but you managed to contain it. You had an attack, but you managed to recover without paying a ransom, say from backup, hopefully. Or an attack succeeded and you had to pay a ransom to recover. All right. While that poll runs, I'm going to quickly review our agenda today. I'm going to spend the opening section here talking about the current cyber threat landscape as it relates to healthcare and the pharmaceutical industry, particularly in multi-site environments, work-from-home environments, as well as in research labs and manufacturing environments, which really pertains mostly to healthcare here. And I'm going to hand podium over to my colleague, Josh Bryant, who is going to take you through a quick tour of the Acronis solution to protecting these environments. Then I'm going to come back and Josh and I are going to answer your questions. And then I will wrap up with some further reading, other resources for you. Can we look at those poll results now, please? All right, let me see if I'm looking. Oh, here we go. So looks like we didn't get any responses to that. Oh, we got a few. All right, I'm starting to see some answers coming in. And it looks like most of you have not experienced an attack, and some of you have experienced one, but managed not to have to pay the ransom. Let's see here. All right, I'm going to move on here. Fortunately, it looks like most of our audience here does not have a lot of experience with it. That is fortunate, as you'll see from the stats that I'm going to kind of walk you through here. But let's have a look at the kind of the basics of the cyber threat landscape in healthcare and pharma these days. If you follow the news at all, you know that there is a major attack on healthcare or pharma every other week, and often with significant losses of PII, other sensitive regulated data, often with very big financial impacts here. And again, I've just picked some recent ones here. It's very easy to find another major ransomware attack or other breach on a regular basis. This is healthcare and pharma are very popular targets for cyber criminals. Probably the biggest example that we've seen in the past year is the attack on Change Healthcare, part of the United Health Group. This was significant because it had huge impact throughout the U.S. healthcare system. Basically, froze claims processing. It cost hospitals millions of dollars per week. Patients couldn't get their claims covered. My own elderly mom was a little wigged out because she tried to get a prescription filled at the pharmacy and couldn't, and this was a direct result of this particular attack. It ended up costing United Healthcare $3 billion last year, and it's going to cost them another $1.5 billion this year. So kind of a egregious example of what not to do to prepare for and respond for a ransomware attack. It also gives you an idea of just how high the stakes are here, how what a big chunk this can take out of your revenue and your reputation should you fail to defend yourself against it. All right, I want to look at how most cyber attacks come in. I'm going to show you some stats from our Acronis Threat Research Unit, which publishes a report a couple times a year and regular updates on cyber threats. But number one with a bullet here, most attacks start with someone clicking on a link or an attachment to typically an email, sometimes other messaging services, but mostly email. Other ways in include exploitation of known vulnerabilities that we haven't managed to get around to patching, brute forcing of credentials, credential compromise is another major attack vector, and supply chain attacks where you've got a connection to a partner that you trust, but they get compromised, and that provides an avenue into your environment, another big one. So let's look a little bit at the some research from our Acronis Cyber Threat, our Threat Research Unit. I've got a few examples of recent reports here. I'm going to give you some stats from the second half of 2024 report. We've got another one that is coming out of the chute very shortly, so keep an eye open for that. As I mentioned, and again, this is very fresh statistics here, phishing, unpatched vulnerabilities, and remote desktop access turned out to be the most effective vectors in. We saw one particular vulnerability that people failed to patch in time to avoid exploitation. But ransomware kind of remains the number one biggest threat to healthcare. If you were been following this environment, you know, a couple of years ago, we saw what looked like a leveling off of attacks, and we thought for a minute that we might be kind of catching up with cyber criminals, and then ChatGPT came out, and the bad guys started exploiting AI tools to improve and scale their attacks, and we've seen the trends going all in the wrong direction now. So again, we break down the main ways that people get in. It's phishing, it's RDP. You know, people aren't securing their remote desktop protocol accurately enough, and that is a very convenient tool for delivering ransomware if you can compromise it, and unpatched vulnerabilities. The main kind of exploits that get executed once they get in are things like PowerShell. Very handy tool if you can compromise it. They pretty much run any kind of malware or collect any kind of information that you want off the target victim. Account discovery, which is basically about getting usernames, passwords, so that you can, those have a lot of value outside of the organization, but they're particularly handy if you want to spread your attack, move laterally through an organization, escalate privileges, and so forth. And then process injection, another way to get malware to execute on the system. All right. So in terms of geography, if you look at ransomware attacks per capita, you know, the USA actually has a lot more in volume, but we have a bigger population. But on a per capita basis, North America has the criminal world's two favorite targets, according to our research, with the big prosperous economies in the EU following close behind. I want to talk very briefly about how AI is helping with these attacks. This is kind of my take, is this is one of the reasons we saw attacks start to swing upward again after it looked like they had kind of leveled off, that we had kind of closed the gap in terms of defense on criminals. But the main thing is it just makes phishing emails more effective. They're now perfectly grammatically perfect. There's no more spelling errors. They can translate them into other languages perfectly. They can write much more compelling kind of calls to action, things that are like have an urgency or an emotional appeal, something to get you to click or to open that attachment. We also now have to worry beyond phishing about impersonation scams. So they can now write an email that sounds exactly like the pro style that your executive or some other individual that you trust uses. Increasingly, they're impersonating voices very effectively. So you might get a voice call from someone who sounds exactly like someone you know and trust, and it is an AI generated deepfake. The latest thing that we've now seen is that real-time video can be effectively impersonated. Best example of this is the UK engineering company Arup, which got scammed for $25 million because someone in their finance organization was on a Zoom call with what he thought were his executives telling him to wire these, to transfer money into these offshore accounts, only for it to turn out that he wasn't actually talking to his executives. They were real-time deepfake impersonations of their voice and images. Pretty scary. The other thing that AI brings to criminals, it lets them scale attacks, do them at greater volume, do them with greater speed, do things like slight variations in text, which helps you avoid anti-spam, anti-phishing, kind of advanced email security features. So bottom line in terms of AI's impact is that it basically lets fairly stupid people get into the game. You don't have to have like coding skills or language skills anymore to get into the business of writing ransomware or writing the kind of phishing emails that get it delivered onto people's, inside of people's defenses. It means that they can do them at much greater scale and much more quickly. And basically, there's no help coming from AI guardrails. They are very, very easy to evade. The good news, relatively speaking for now, is that generative AI is not inventive. It's great at repeating patterns that it's already known. So, coding is basically something that it can do very well, and it can mimic the good, well-written prose, but it is not capable of inventing innovative new attacks yet. So what that means is the kind of defenses and recovery mechanisms that we're already familiar with should work, but we've got to worry about the scale and the speed with which they have been mounted. Effectively, because there's now this ocean of attacks coming at us, millions per day with new iterations coming out kind of on a daily basis, it means that the likelihood that an attack is going to succeed has gotten much, much more probable, which means that we've got to focus as much on defense and recovery these days as we do on defense. And you'll see this reflected everywhere. Cybersecurity standards like the NIST CSF 2.0 and CIS controls and the ISO standards, regulatory regimes like NIS2 and GDPR and HIPAA are all reflecting this notion. You'll also see it in requirements from your cyber insurance companies. New requirements that say, look, it's not just about defense, though we do expect you to use multi-factor authentication and encryption everywhere. You really should be upgrading your endpoint defense, but we also need you to be very diligent about backup. We need to see a disaster recovery plan. We want to see incident response planning from you. So now it's about cyber resilience. It's the defense, but it's also the recovery that's equally important, because the assumption is that with the help of AI and their general sophistication, the kind of industrialization of cybercrime, that the likelihood that an attack is going to get through is much greater today. All right, I want to take you through a kind of few use cases here. I wish I had more time to get into these in detail, but I've got a lot of material to cover, so forgive me if I kind of rip through this. All right, so there's a lot of areas of healthcare and pharma where you've got a big distributed environment. You're operating a chain of clinics in addition to kind of like a big central hospital, or you got a chain of retail optometry clinics, or a chain of pharmacies, retail pharmacies. And protecting all these kind of remote distributed sites is very complicated. It's difficult to do from a kind of a centralized location. You'll also see that these environments are also kind of very heterogeneous and not necessarily uniform across all your locations. In many cases, that's because you've grown by acquiring other companies and inheriting their own particular idiosyncratic collection of hardware and applications and network technologies, right? Many of us use a lot of different tools from different vendors to manage these environments, to protect them, to provide data protection for them. So we've got backup from one vendor, we've got antivirus from another vendor, we've got email security from another vendor. There's this kind of proliferation of tools that we use, our own, another set of remote monitoring and maintenance tools, maybe a disaster recovery solution. And having this kind of toolbox full of disparate tools with no integration with each other, don't talk to each other. Each of it requires their own agent on the endpoint. That's a kind of a complicated way to do things. It's not super efficient, and it's really hard on your expensive IT and cybersecurity staffers who have to learn all these different tools. All right, we're in a highly regulated industry, so that means that you've got to deal with different compliance standards depending on your geographies, and everybody's under budget constraints and hiring limitations and so forth. So what we propose that you look for are solutions where you can consolidate, manage your remote environment from a kind of a single centralized console, maybe delegate some responsibility down to the branch or the store or the clinic kind of level, because that's the way you've historically operated. You don't give complete control to everything, but you do provide some limited kind of control of backup or endpoint protection down at the store level. We really do advocate for managing all of these different tools from a consolidated single platform that makes it easier, cheaper, faster to get your people trained up, easier for them to do their jobs, right? And ideally, what you'll end up with is something that can protect all of your IT estate, no matter how diverse and complex, how many different kinds of hardware, different applications that you're running across your many remote sites. Compliance is going to drive you to make sure that you can deal with ransomware. That's a threat that is name checked in a lot of the compliance and best practices standards, as well as what your insurance companies are asking from you. It means encryption everywhere. It means that you're going to need secure data centers. And like, think about the data sovereignty requirements of something like GDPR, where they don't want you storing PII in countries that they don't think do a good job of protecting data from like prying spy agencies, for instance. So your ability to specify where you want your data stored becomes important. Your insurer, your compliance regime is probably going to want a DR plan from you. Since disaster recovery often means replicating data in the cloud, you're going to need something that meets your HIPAA requirements for protecting those replicas of data, making sure that they're safe. It's also a good idea to look for solutions where you can take advantage of AI to improve the power and efficiency of your staff, basically fighting fire with fire. The bad guys are using AI, you better be using it too, to make yourself more efficient, to give you more automation in what you're doing. And that should save you money and allow you to do more sophisticated things more efficiently with the same headcount without having to hire additional people. I won't take you through the details of these examples, but we just want to let you know that we've got a couple of, this is just two of many, many customers that we have in healthcare that are these highly distributed environments, like hundreds of sites, a lot of users, a kind of complex environment, need for backup, disaster recovery, remote management, and cybersecurity, and how we've helped them kind of consolidate this environment, do it more efficiently, and help them meet their compliance goals. All right, I want to move on to another use case. This is the work from home example. So, of course, we all had to work out of work from home when COVID hit, but it turned out that that was a pretty efficient way to run your environment, particularly for employees who weren't directly involved in patient care. So if you're in accounting or any other kind of horizontal kind of function, you can work from your home office. You don't have to come into the hospital or the clinic or the lab. Problem we've got now is that ransomware criminals love targeting healthcare and pharma, because regulation means that you're likelier to pay a ransom quickly, lest you become like a United Healthcare style of victim. problem with that is that if you get a ransomware attack that spreads through your work from home environment, that can create a real bottleneck. Your employees either have to bring their laptops into an IT staff location, or central IT has to go out and kind of remotely restore every work from home worker serially, which is that's really time consuming. That's going to keep people offline much longer. So one of the ways that we have proposed that you address this issue is to empower individual work from home workers with the ability to recover their own environment in a way that is like super simple for them. They don't have to be IT whizzes, just pull out a card that says, all right, reboot your system, hold this function key down, choose this menu item when it comes up, and your system will be rebuilt from a local backup in a matter of minutes, getting them back online really, really quickly, in really a matter of minutes as opposed to hours or days that it would take otherwise. All right. Now I want to talk about operational technology environments. So forgive me if you're not in pharma and you're not familiar with OT. I'm going to talk about OT for a few minutes. This is the automation equipment that is used in research laboratories and in manufacturing facilities in pharma. And when the PC components of these, there's a lot of PCs involved here, Linux and Windows machines that manage this automation equipment, monitor it, configure it. If your PCs fall over, that brings down your research processes or brings down your manufacturing processes. So in research lab environments, that can be really, really expensive, particularly if the system is controlling like biologics or is managing reagents or cell cultures. These are things that with an outage may have to be tossed, or you could lose some important research that research progress that you've made, or if you miss certain schedule commitments, you may be subject to regulatory sanctions. So in manufacturing environments, where you're actually stamping out or producing pharmaceutical products, these same PCs that are used to control this manufacturing automation equipment can also result in some really expensive outages, particularly if these PCs are controlling things like HTS or LIMS platforms, and the outage results in batch loss or requires you to recertify your clean rooms, or invites regulatory penalties or regulatory actions like 483 citations. All right. So protecting these PCs in these OT environments is challenging. A lot of them are vintage. That's the polite term for antique legacy kind of PCs that tend to hang around because the automation equipment they're controlling has very long life cycles, 10, 20, 30 years. You don't want to upgrade those because they might break certification, or they might break or limit some functionality on your OT applications. So you don't want to mess with that environment. The stability of that environment is very important. But these are things like Windows XP, right? Which has been, was end of life by Microsoft over 10 years ago, and been out of support for a long, long time. You can't run modern antivirus on it, so they tend to be more vulnerable to modern cyber threats. Patching and updating them is something that most people do not want to do. You leave those environments alone. They're running, they're working. Don't mess with them. Downtime is not a great option if you need to install or perform backup or cybersecurity operations. And in a lot of these environments, you don't have on-site IT. It's hard to justify having someone there full time. A lot of cases, these environments are air-gapped. So you've either got to dispatch someone physically to the environment, and that can be expensive and extend your outage. So what you want in these environments are capabilities, so basically data protection and security features that will prevent downtime failures that will lead to a halt in your research processes or your manufacturing operations, especially in air-gapped environments, which are pretty common for security reasons, right? It helps to get something that has been certified by your automation vendors. That will give you confidence in the solution and a good warm feeling that you're not going to run into compatibility issues with your backup or your security tools. Stability to the environment is paramount. You don't want to be forced to upgrade these vintage PCs because they work, and that's an environment that you don't want to tinker with. Self-service recovery is a capability I've talked in, just as in work from home. It's very important in these environments because you don't have IT people on staff, and the fact that it's air gap means that remote management and monitoring from a central IT staff is not going to be of any help here. So waiting for IT people to show up here is going to extend that outage. And as I mentioned, these are extremely costly outages. It also helps to find solutions that the industry analysts have vetted and can attest are kind of best in class. All right, when I talk about antique or vintage operating systems, it's mainly these old Windows and Linux OSs that are prevalent in OT, and those are the ones that can be challenging to protect. Self-service recovery is kind of the focus of our next phase here, and this is the idea that you can make it possible for a lab worker or a factory worker to initiate recovery of a OT controlling PC that fails and not have to wait for IT to show up. That's really important at sites that are in kind of remote locations or are air gapped. In other words, have no external network connections and therefore obviate the use of remote monitoring and maintenance tools. And that the ability to perform that self-service recovery by a non-IT person really does a lot to reduce your OT outages from what could be hours or days to a matter of minutes. All right. With that, I want to introduce my colleague, Josh Bryant, who is going to give you a quick tour of the Acronis answer to some of the challenges that I brought up today. If you don't know Josh, he leads our North American team of solutions engineers here at Acronis. He's been helping our customers and our partners build more cyber resilient business operations environments for over 8 years. He's got more years before that as an SE at companies like Dell and Sixstream. Josh, I'm going to let you take the podium here and do your bit, and I will come back when you're done with that so that we can answer questions from the audience.
All right, thank you very much.
Keep those questions coming in from the over the Q&A interface. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, perfect. Okay.
You sound
so
great.
Guys, thank you very much for your time. What I'm going to do here is just give you guys a little bit of a brief overview of the console itself, show you guys a couple ways to do recoveries and stuff like that. And then on top of that, if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A. But just based off of what James Slaby was talking about during that presentation, I'm going to just go ahead and show you within the console how we can relate some of those things over to here. So what I'm sharing out right now is our cloud-hosted management console for the OT space. So I just want to briefly,
Josh, did you grab control there?
Yes, I
Oh, you do have it. Sorry, I want go right ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, you're perfectly fine. Yeah, thanks for asking. If I didn't, that would have been bad. So yeah, just making sure everyone's on the same page here as far as what I'm sharing out right now. We are inside of the cloud-hosted console for our OT space. We have two versions of our console. We have the on-prem one, in which if you did need to be an air-gapped environment, we have that. It looks identical to this. It just doesn't have the word cloud in the top left. So when you go to sign up for an account with us today, we have our cloud-hosted version and our on-prem. But the nuances and the things we're going to be sharing here today are going to work in the same vein. So what I want to show you here is an agent that I have installed on an endpoint so we can kind of go through some of the options that James was just going over. So what I have here inside of one of these agents is I want to show you guys the breadth of our platform and everything we're able to give you guys. So when you look here, one agent gives you the ability to have a ton of really cool features inside of this platform. Now, what's really nice about it is most of these features are technically standalone things that you would get from various vendors, and you would go out and look at the marketplace and see how you handle patch management, how you handle, email security, how you handle EDR, backup and recovery, and you would get those different licenses. What's cool about our platform, especially in the OT space or the healthcare industry space, is we can consolidate all of those items underneath one agent for you. And of course, underneath one license scheme as well, right? So that's the entire purpose of this platform. So when you install that one agent, you get everything under the sun that you guys would typically imagine with those separate entities. So as you can see here, we have full images of being able to do backup and recovery. And as we go down the line here, EDR, antivirus, and so on. What I'm going to focus on today is the anti-malware and the ransomware part, as well as that backup and recovery, to show you guys all the ins and outs of what you are able to do. So very briefly, I just want to expand the backup and recovery and show, as you can see, all the base options that any of you guys on this call would think of for what in the world you would want within a backup solution. We definitely have. And this includes the legacy part as well, like James was talking about. So whether it is going to be an XP machine or a brand new 2022 server, it doesn't matter to us. You're going to be able to install and get to at least this point right here, to where we're going to be able to do a couple of different things depending on what you're looking for. But first and foremost, what I really want to show you guys there is I want to go beyond this and go into the backup options to show something that is really, really cool. So let me scroll down here a bit and click on one-click recovery. During the setup, let's say you're in an OT space, or you're in a space where you can't really, as an IT admin, get on site all the time to assist end users when they have hiccups, or say run into an issue with their drive or something like that. One-click recovery allows you to forego that need to have to be on site very, very quickly. What one-click recovery will do is allow you to create a backup archive copy of that image of that server or laptop, whatever it might be, and it stores it on the actual disk itself on that end unit. And it allows someone like, say, me, if I was an end user working at your company, it allows me to log in and call you guys if I ever needed to and say, hey, I'm having an issue. You guys do not need to come on site. It allows me to just log in with my boot media or my boot key. I hit F11 during the boot screen, and then I'm able to choose the Acronis boot mode to start doing recoveries from that end. And that's all without any of you as an IT admin needing to remote in or anything like that. So that's just one of those really cool ways that we're able to help these end users get back up and running without any of you needing to come and be hands-on. But on top of that, if I back up here real second, you can see this gives you the full basis of doing full backup and recovery. You only need one full image of a backup to get all the ways for recovery that you guys could imagine. So all the granular options, all the recovery options are a given with one full backup archive. Before I go into the recovery options though and show you guys what that looks like, I do want to stress one other part of our platform because it is pretty cool. If I minimize the backup and recovery options here, because this is us setting up a plan for us and what we want to protect inside of this end unit. You'll see if I minimize this, this right here is another part of what James was talking about during the PowerPoint slides, which is the protection against malware, anti-malware measures, making sure from a ransomware perspective that you're not going to be hit or inundated with a bunch of headache nonsense and stuff like that. And the reason you're able to have that peace of mind is because we have that built into this console as well. So just as well with the backup and recovery, inside of that same agent, you're able to turn on our full, typically standalone software, right? Typically, this is a standalone vendorship. You're able to turn this on and it coexists with your backup plan. So that's what's really awesome about this. There's no additional installs that any of you need to do or anything like that. It's just a matter of turning it on if it meets your use case. Now, obviously, if you have another vendor or something like that that's coming up for renewal, you wouldn't turn this on right away. But as that vendorship is coming up for renewal, turn ours on, try it out, and see and compare to that other vendorship to see if maybe you want to bring it under the hood. Because this right here, this advanced anti-malware, this does all the typical things that you would expect that standalone software to do, right? It's going to look at all the processes, all the system registries that are running, anything that people try to download. It's going to scan all of those services and make sure that you're not getting hit with any type of malware. And then on top of that, and I'm going to show you guys where to manage all of this too. But what's really cool is on top of that up here, this is our ransomware proponent. So if any of you are struggling or trying to figure out how can I include backup and recovery features, stuff like that, as well as this anti-malware and ransomware feature, we have that covered to where you can turn this on. And let's go ahead and say as an end user like me, let's say I accidentally or even on purpose ran some type of ransomware encryption, like say the Lapsus virus or the WannaCry virus or something like that. This here would prevent all of those things from wreaking havoc in your system. It will attempt to run that ransomware for say 0.5 of a second, but our algorithms are going to catch that and then flash back the data to right before that time hit. So you're not going to be impacted. You're not from an IT perspective having to be called and get inundated with all of these different hiccups that are happening in your environment. You have that peace of mind that you're going to be good to go. But I want to show also the bigger picture on how this stuff works for you from a restore perspective as well as that anti-malware perspective. So check this out. Once you've turned on your plan, and this is only a focus feature demo, right? I'm only focusing on the backup and recovery as well as a couple anti-malware features. There's a ton in here, right? If you look here, you can see there's so many different features that we can turn on or off depending on what your use case might be. So just very briefly, patch management. You may need a service that comes in to help prevent those antivirus measures from getting hit even harder. You want to be able to have confident scans of your environment to make sure that you are vulnerability stacked up and you can see exactly where you are and make those provisional changes until the right kind of updates come out, right? But on top of that, you also want to be able to have a really good, awesome patch management system to account for those vulnerabilities. And that's exactly what we have inside of here as well. So even though I'm not deep diving into those features, just know we absolutely do have some really cool ancillary tie-ins to those bigger pieces of that backup and recovery and that anti-malware provisioning. So real quick here, before I go big picture, I want to show you this. So let's go ahead and say one of you had an outage right now in your OT space. How in the world do we recover? What are we able to do? I just want to show you real quick the breadth of options here. So real quick up here in the top for backup locations, you're able to store anywhere that you guys want. You have the cloud, you have third-party storage, you have the ability to store locally for quicker recoveries. The only thing we don't support is writing to tape drives. So absolutely everything under the sun, Buffalo NASs, SAN devices, direct attached storage, anything you would need for a quick, efficient recovery instead of, say, pulling it from the cloud or something like that is all doable. Up here, you're able to pick exactly where you want to pull your backup from. And then remember what I said in the beginning. One full backup gives you the ability to recover any way you guys see fit. You do not need to do separate backup sets or anything like that. We're done with all of that stuff. So when you come in here, all your file level recoveries are directly in here and you're able to recover to anywhere that you see fit. I just need to make sure I actually have an agent that's online. That's why that popped up. But on top of that, if you go into the entire machine recovery as well, let me see here. Oh yeah, I'm just doing a wrong machine, so that's my fault. 1 second there. I'll go back. When you go into the entire machine and you're able to do those recoveries, up here for that physical machine, you guys can recover to anywhere you see fit within your internal orchestra. So if you had, say, a physical machine die inside of your OT infrastructure, you have a couple options at play. Whether you are buying a brand new one, it's coming in off the streets, whether you had another piece of hardware that was in the closet and you're going to be pulling that out to work with it, regardless of whatever scenario it is that you pop up with, we're able to support that fully. Because you can see here, we can recover to a physical machine as well as a virtual machine. And we do not care what the original state of that machine was. And this includes, to James's point earlier, those legacy hardware as well. So even if you have legacy hardware and you're eventually trying to figure out how to migrate that to brand new hardware because you're upgrading or whatever the purpose might be, we're able to meet that. And let me just explain a couple things here. So let's say you wanted to do a physical machine recovery. Here's how quick and easy that is. If you're doing from an online perspective, meaning that the agent is online and connected to the management server, we can install the agent onto the brand new machine, select that brand new piece of hardware, hit OK, and we're going to ping that machine and then start what's called universal discovery on that. So we have universal recovery inside of our entire platform here. We're going to ping that other hardware, see the disk mapping for it. We're going to allow you to alter the disk mapping should you need to. You can also switch from disk mapping to volume mapping and go back and forth. So just giving you an idea of just all the different things that are supported there, right? And then on top of that, let's go ahead and say we're good to go and we want to recover this to a totally different machine like this is here. We will reboot that brand new machine into what's called Acronis boot mode. It will then do the Windows sysprep, inject the drivers for it, everything that you would need, and then start hydrating all of that data, either from the cloud or your local target source, and it will be a full-fledged machine up and running. So that's really, really awesome. But on top of that, you can also spin that up at any time as a physical or, as a virtual machine as well. If any of you ever have an instance where the physical machine died and you just have a host sitting there, but you don't have a physical box, awesome. Assign that host to your account. And then in here, you can go in and select what host you want to spin this up as a full-fledged VM. And then all the typical things that you guys would typically want for that type of process, such as what data store am I going to be utilizing? What are the VM settings? And then publish this up. It will then be a full-fledged VM at the ready for you. But that's not all, because if I go down here a bit and I go up here to more ways to recover, let's go ahead and say you're in a very segmented offline OT industry space. You don't have any internet access. You don't have a way to even connect to this console. Very, very logical. That's something we see all the time. You can come up here to the more ways to recover option and download that ISO image. That ISO image you can throw onto a USB. It has our agent inside of it. And if you cared to, you can recover that way by plugging it into some offline hardware and then doing restores from a local archive, or you're able to do backups from that as well. So that's another reason I bring that in. Let's go ahead and say you don't even want to install an agent and connect it to a console like this. You absolutely can download the ISO image and run backups directly through that offline backup with the USB plugin. So all of that is supported. You have all of those different ways. Now, with that, that's all just for the backup and recovery options, making sure that you see all the different ways if you were ever stuck, how you can get back up and running. But I just very briefly want to show one last thing, and that's if I scroll down here, these are all the different backup storage locations that you're able to dive into at any time and start doing those recoveries. And then on top of that, if you ever did get hit with malware or anything like that, this is exactly where that stuff goes. So to James's point, if you got hit with malware, got hit with ransomware, things like that, we do have all of these really cool provisions in place to make sure you are protected inside of that ecosystem. And then we have a couple different ways that you can interact with that malware data. If you choose to, you can quarantine it like I show you here. You can quarantine it, go into the quarantine files, add it to a whitelist, restore it if it never should have been flagged, or just delete it outright. But also in the settings for this, you can absolutely set it to purge all of these automatically so that you don't even have a buildup sitting in your quarantined file list. So again, every customer or every partner that we have is going to have a different use case for what they want to do with this, but just letting you know all the different flexible options that we definitely have in this console. So with that, that was a little bit of a brief overview. Just wanted to give you guys an idea of what it looks like to do the backup and recovery, as well as tie in that anti-malware provisions. So thank you very much, James. I hope that was beneficial to you guys, and I want to hand that back to him. Thank you.
That was awesome, Josh. Don't go away. I need you for the
I
Q&A.
will not. I will be here. Yeah.
Now, can you see my screen here? Did it go?
I
Did it revert back
yeah.
to?
Yes, it did. I see live audience
There we go.
Q&A. Yes, sir.
Great, great, awesome. All right. So obviously, this is kind of a whirlwind tour of a platform that has a lot of rich capabilities that we can't do in 10 or 12 minutes. But you'll have the opportunity to request a more detailed consult, including a demo if you want, in just a little bit. But first, I wanted to get to audience questions. This is your chance to submit your questions through the Q&A here. So please send those to me and Josh while you can. We're going to spend a couple minutes here. Let's see, I've got one. It says, like, you talked about supply chain attacks. How do we validate the security posture of third-party vendors? All right, this is obviously, I'll take this one, Josh, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Um, um, this is obviously a kind of a growing issue. You'll see that earlier in my stats, I talked about tech supply chain attacks as maybe third or fourth on the list of threat, attack surfaces that you have to worry about. And it really is a problem because, the way these things work is that attackers will compromise the software distribution repository of a tech vendor and embed malware in it. Unbeknownst to the vendor, they do another patch or feature update, and that gets distributed to all of their customers. So if you're a SolarWinds customer, you, for example, might have been a victim of this. This was the first really widespread tech supply chain attack that we saw. And people were downloading what was a trusted, um, verified software download that turned out to have malware embedded in it, and that affected at least 10,000 of their customers. Kind of a big deal. And that's the sort of sophisticated attack that the biggest cyber criminal gangs can launch nowadays. It's tough. The yield on it is really high because you have a trusted vendor distributing that for you, and that's completely evading any defensive measures that the targets may have in place. I wrote a piece on this in the wake of the SolarWinds attack that you can find on our resource center. I didn't include it in the assets that I'm going to show you a little bit later on, but that's a worthwhile one. It talks about how you should query your vendors about the steps that they're taking to protect themselves and to thus prevent themselves from becoming a link in a tech supply chain attack that will ultimately reach you. If they're a software vendor, you also should be querying them on things like secure software development methods. And if they are a cloud services provider, you need to dig into what they're doing to secure their cloud data centers. We've all got good answers for those, but we've also put together a methodology there that you can use to do at least kind of a first pass level of vetting on your vendors for that security. All right, here. Another attendee asks, how can we document backups are accurate, and how can we document that recovery is accurate? Josh, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so as far as backup and recoveries being accurate, there's a couple things that you guys can do within the console if we're just talking about our platform here. One, if you're doing a backup, you can do what is called a backup scan of those integrity of the integrity of those archives, and that will show you if there's been any delta changes or any malware integrity issues since the last time we scanned it. So the data sets themselves, wherever they are sitting, we will scan for that. Now, on top of that, when we run a backup, the agent itself, for the backup and the recovery, okay, the agent has these malware provisions inside. So it's looking at the data transfer during the backup and the recovery process to make sure that we are not allowing any malware that starts to open up during one of those actions to start ripping impact on your system, which we all know that can be a very cumbersome issue. So that's one. But two, like I mentioned, when you guys go to do a recovery of any type, there's a couple things that we have as provisions for you to make sure that that data integrity is in check, besides just doing a scan of that data. We can absolutely do integrity check by doing a VM standup. Whether it is local and you want to do a VM standup on a local host and do a heartbeat check, it goes way beyond just a standard checksum check. Everyone here knows a checksum check is very cumbersome and it can be really annoying to time those out. So what we do is we go beyond that. We go way into the heartbeat check sensor as well as the screenshot verification. So we'll do that. And then on top of that, if you want to do that in our DR scenario, we can do that in our DR cloud. So there's a lot of really cool, unique ways to make sure that your data is safe when you go to actually access it. So absolutely.
Thanks for that, Josh. I'm glad you particularly mentioned the integrated malware scanning of backup archives.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
another. We like to tout the advantages of integrating your data protection, your cybersecurity, and that's a really kind of obvious, strong one. All right. You can talk about the challenges of patching or securing legacy systems in
Hmm.
regulated manufacturing settings. That's a good one. You know, this is the vintage system um, uh, uh, question that I raised before. That in a lot of cases, securing those systems is difficult. If it's old enough, your typical endpoint security vendor is not going to have a version of their product that runs on Windows 7 or XP or some ancient version of Red Hat Linux or whatever. So it's a real issue. Josh, any thoughts on that? I know I have some,
Yeah,
but
no, not a problem at all. So one of the biggest issues that comes up with that when we're talking about, what are the challenges of patching legacy systems? So for anyone on the call here, we're all going to be aware that you're going to have downtime concerns. You're going to have real issues of when we go to patch this machine that's been sitting there since 2001, right? We cannot afford the downtime, whether it's even a couple hours, a couple half hours, whatever. You want to make sure that we are doing the provisions in place so that when we take it offline for that period of time, we are running an efficient backup, that it's going to be malware free, and that when we go to then recover that down the road, it's actually worthwhile. So, what's really cool about our software is one, if you have the agent support, like I mentioned before, you're able to tie it into the console and see it there from a legacy perspective and run those backups, but that's not all. If it's still legacy enough to where you do not even want to integrate it into that type of network, you can still do that boot media backup and you will still have that legacy provision in case you ever did need to offset that down the road. So those are some of the big issues that come up with the legacy hardware and doing those type of backups or doing those type of patches.
yeah, the one thing I'll add to that is the notion of rollback.
Yep.
If you're doing a patch or upgrade of any kind, or you're trying to install a new cybersecurity measure, the ability to go, oh, that caused a problem, and to roll back to your prior revision quickly is really important, and that will at least allow you to uh, get yourself back quickly to your previous environment, and then you can figure out offline, say in a sandbox environment or a virtual
Hmm.
machine environment, what you need to do to make that work. All right. We have another question here. I think we're running out of time, but I want to get to at least one more. Um, how is how are cyber insurance requirements changing after recent industry breaches? All right, I'll start with this one. It's not just the recent breaches that have changed cyber insurance. That started a few years ago when the insurance industry figured out that cyber insurance, which had been a very profitable line for them for a long time, that their margins were really shrinking on it, and they were paying out more and more ransom coverage, claims for coverage of ransom payments. Um, the good news is that the new requirements that the cyber insurance industry is now putting out there to healthcare and pharma organizations to say, look, if you want coverage and you want it at good rates, you've got to do these things. You need multi-factor authentication. You need encryption everywhere. You need state-of-the-art endpoint protection. You need to be following industry best practices for backup, meaning storing, among other things, storing copies in multiple locations in different media. You need a disaster recovery plan. You need an incident response plan. All of these things not only will help you qualify for insurance and get it at better rates, access to discount premiums for doing a super good job in cyber resilience, both defense and recovery. That'll also help you with your compliance requirements because those have moved very much in parallel with insurance industry requirements. And again, this is all in response to the industrialization of malware, particularly ransomware production and distribution, and the optimization of attack methods like phishing with the help of Gen AI tools, making these perfect phishing emails with very believable, credible calls to action from sources that look like they're trustworthy. Um, that your regulators are almost certainly asking you to take those same kind of measures. And if you're one of those organizations that says, we like to follow industry best practices as defined by cybersecurity standards organizations like NIST, like NIST 2.0, that's all in there too. So any investment that you make improving your cyber resilience is going to pay off in multiple ways. But the sort of the recent wrinkle is understand that it's an extremely high probability that an attack is going to get through, given the sophistication, the volume, the speed of modern cyber attacks. And so pay attention as much to recovery as you do to defense. Anything to add there, Josh?
No, I actually think you nailed it all. So that was pretty well done.
All
To be
right.
fair, that's your whole wheelhouse. So I think you did fine.
Thanks, man. We're just about out of time, and I wanted to take the audience through a couple of additional resources. So thank you, Josh.
Yeah, no problem.
Uh, Audience, I'm going to say, let us kind of move on here. We want to run a quick poll here about how you'd like Acronis to reach out to you. For instance, if you want to um, talk to Josh or somebody on his team, get a little bit of free advice or maybe a more detailed demo, that's an option you can choose. If you like to take a test drive of Acronis Cyber Protect yourself, figure out how easy it is to do the kind of broad range capabilities that we tried to show you a little bit of today, go ahead and choose that. All right, wanted to, while that runs, I want to take you through some resources here. We've got a bunch of great content on our website to give you kind of a quick introduction to what we're doing for healthcare, specifically as it relates to HIPAA compliant disaster recovery, what we're doing in the pharma and biopharma area, what we're doing broadly in manufacturing, but that also is very applicable to any kind of OT environment, including in pharma manufacturing. Got some product details on our solution for OT environments and an infographic that will help give you a kind of a quick understanding of how and why it's important to have self-service recovery in these OT environments and your work from home environments, whether it's research labs or manufacturing facilities. Also got a handful of solution briefs, case studies, and another infographic here, all about operational technology environments and self-service recovery. I mentioned the importance of analyst reports. We bought reprints from a couple of analysts who evaluated our solution and have some very nice things to say about it. We've also got the latest copy of the Acronis Cyber Threats Report, though there's a brand new one coming out in I think that's just a couple of days away now from the first half of the year. Maybe that'll come out after July 1, actually. All right. You can scan this code or go to that link if you want to schedule a consult with Josh or somebody on his team of solutions engineers here. If you're joining us from the EU, that's going to come from Josh's counterpart over there. But we'll hook you up with somebody who has a lot of experience in protecting healthcare and pharma environments, who can walk you through our solution. There's another code that you can scan, or you can just search for Acronis Cyber Protect trial and get a free trial there. In closing, I'll say, if you got the means and the inclination, please support the Acronis Cyber Foundation. This is our nonprofit that builds schools and provides technology training to kids around the world that can use the help. It's a great organization. Acronis employees pitch in their own personal time to help build these schools, a worthy cause if you can manage it. With that, I'll say thanks everybody for your time today. We hope to see you again at another Acronis event very soon. Be safe, everybody.